This is not Ron Paul. This is just a picture of him. And in 2008, on January 10th, Ron Paul was debating the head Republicans at Myrtle Beach Convention Center. With millions of people watching and thousands at the debate, the moderator asked Ron Paul, with a smirk on his face, "Sir, what is your electability, if you have any?" The crowd started laughing. The fellow Republicans got a smirk on their face like, what's this guy doing on the stage in the first place? But Ron Paul continued to pose that he is the most Republican on this platform and how all other Republicans are hypocrites. It was at that point when the other Republicans started to put their smirks away and started to listen because the crowd was going crazy because of it. Now, Hillary Clinton, back in 2008, told Ron Paul during a congressional meeting that, having campaigned against you in the last election, I have never seen a more enthusiastic support group for you. People running up and down highways holding Ron Paul signs. Your message obviously resonated with a lot of people. So what's the point of today? The point of today is to show you that Ron Paul is a potential presidential candidate. But why would anybody want to listen to this? Aren't politics kind of boring? Well, the reason why you should listen is because according to the audience analysis, many of you don't believe in truth in politics. While truth may be defined differently amongst everybody else, I would like to shine some light on Ron Paul, because the first step towards truth is to be informed. Now, for me, my research includes 10 years of watching Ron Paul. I've done major resources from CNN, NBC, Fox, the Huffington Post. I've read political statements about why he's good and why he's bad. I've stayed up all night for the past 2 weeks to try to find out the flaws and the pros in Ron Paul. That, and I saw him speak at UCSD, which was pretty cool. So first today I'd like to talk about what Ron Paul did before politics, then we're going to talk about Ron Paul when he entered politics, and then we'll conclude about Ron Paul's influence. Now, Ron Paul, before politics, started as an OBGYN. He delivered over 4,000 babies. That's a big number. Ron Paul has a family. He has one wife, same wife, his whole life. He has 5 children and 18 grandchildren. Ron Paul's youngest son, Rand Paul, is currently the senator of Kentucky. Now that we talked about Ron Paul's family, let's move on to Ron Paul in politics. Now, Ron Paul stood up against Washington, D.C. When he was elected in Congress in 1976, he only lasted a couple months. But that didn't get him down, because back in 1978, he did it again, and this time he proclaimed himself as a solid congressional person. Now, Ron Paul said in his book, A Revolution Manifesto, that truth is treason in an empire of lies. What does that mean for us? According to a recent NBC poll, 9% of the approval rating for Congress is 9%. So the American people aren't really trusting Congress because of that 9% ratio. Back in 2007, Ron Paul stood in front of Congress, God, millions of people, and said, this housing bubble that is going to burst is caused by artificially low interest rates. He continued to say how the Federal Reserve is just propping up bad debt. He was proclaiming all this before anything happened. And what happened a couple of years later? The housing bubble burst. So that is when people started to recognize of who Ron Paul is. Now that we talked about Ron Paul in Washington, let's talk about Ron Paul's influence on America. In 2012, Ron Paul got the most money from active military than anybody. He's one of the most supported amongst, here's a nice little poll, you can include President Obama, you can include all the Republicans. He received 67% from active military, as well as people who are retired in the military. In one quarter, Ron Paul received $150,000 in donations. That, and Ron Paul's the only candidate to have served in a war. That's most likely why the military men like him so much, because they know where he's coming from. Now, listening to Ron Paul speak is kind of like being on a boat, feeling those waves in the ocean, because it's calm and relaxing. When I saw him speak at UCSD, not only did I think maybe, possibly, it could be that this man can save America, but I also thought this guy's a very eloquent speaker. Everywhere he goes, he gains thousands of fans. back in 2012, his popularity grew so much that the last two Republicans duking it out was Mitt Romney and Ron Paul. Now, Mr. Harvard Spokesley, who is a professor of public policy and organization and former director of MIT Security Study Program, who has an MPA and PhD from Harvard University, said pertaining to Ron Paul's foreign policy, he is easily dismissed as a quack. A lot of politicians won't say come home, but he does, and it's great. That's why the active military love him so much, because they can relate. That was a lot of points we just covered in a short amount of time. First, we talked about what Ron Paul did before politics. Then we talked about Ron Paul in politics, and then we concluded with Ron Paul's influence. So at the end of the day, Ron Paul's the guy, when questioned about his electability, was able to stand up and argue in front of thousands of people that he is able to be electable, that he has a plan and he can do it. So remember, today, the main purpose was to shine some light on Ron Paul. So in 2 years from now, when you hear political pundits battling out whether we should spend money on welfare or money on warfare, remember Ron Paul said, why spend any money at all and bring the troops back home? Because after all, the first step toward truth is to be informed. Thank you.
Thank you.